This time on No Not the Mind Probe, episode number 97, Just a Hopeless Robo-Mantic.
Welcome to No the Mind Probe. I was going for a Tobias Vaughn, right? He's got that sort of weird
And the sleepy eye. The sleepy eye comes across in the voice.
Yeah. And he's famous in the episode for Paca. And very lovely. Yeah. So this is my snobby. No, it's not down to. What is that? Is that Eton? What is that accent? That sort of.
I don't know. But disaffected and
well, if you're disaffected, you're probably very excited by this podcast. This is for the disaffected.
That's right.
Where we watch and rank the first 300 Doctor Who stories. And welcome back from hiatus, which is totally planned and scheduled. Yeah, we totally.
I think
little break.
Everyone saw the press release. We're going to take that break. Not a problem.
We did a corporate retreat. We went to Nashville and I think we really worked on some stuff. I did some trust falls with some people who don't listen to the podcast. I think a lot of the really good input.
Yeah. We just ran up to people on the street and fell toward them. And you know what? I have to say, a lot
of people got us.
Thank you, Nashville. A lot of people got us. Yeah.
My name's John Grant. I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 39 years.
My name is Porter Mason. John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 27 years. A few years ago, I finally said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Each episode of this podcast, we look at two stories. We're going through the newer Doctor Who series in order up through the Jodie Whittaker years. And then John here acts as our Doctor Who sommelier and pairs that newer story with a classic story. John, what are we watching this episode?
Well, look, first, before we get to that, we need to talk about the second part. So, yes, we went on retreat, obviously. But then I went to Gallifrey 1.
Ooh.
Which is the big Doctor Who convention at the glamorous Los Angeles Marriott Airport Marriott.
One of the best airport Marriotts around.
So you just basically get off a plane and you're at the hotel.
Which is
wonderful.
Probably why the Doctor Who actors are pretty excited about that.
Oh yeah, I think they enjoy being flown to California. We had some. So very exciting. So first off, we had Alex Kingston there, River Song. I'm showing you, if you're on the YouTubes, which you should be, I'll show you, there's a picture of me with River Song. There she is. She's being very flirtatious.
Very flirty, that River.
Yep. So she was there. She was great. And then we had Derek Jacobi there. This is an autographed thing of Derek Jacobi. He plays the Master in Utopia. He was wonderful. He was very entertaining because, well, he's not, for those of you who think he's just famous for Doctor Who, actually, he's done many, many things. And he kept, during the interviews and things that they did, he kept saying, I was only in it for an hour. And everybody was like, yes, but you were amazing. He was quite a lovely man. And he talked about I, Claudius, and he talked about Cadfael and being in Kenneth Branagh movies and all this Shakespeare. And he was absolutely wonderful. 85 years old.
Wow.
They kept him very busy. We get to chat. So one of the things we did when you're old and white and rich, you get to do things like pay for extras. And so we paid for this wine thing. You could basically go and you would have wine with them, which consisted of you at a little table with about 6 other people. And then they would shuffle the person by and you'd have about 5 minutes to shoot questions at them. And so, yes, we got to talk to Derek Jacobi, Eric Roberts.
This is exciting because when I hear about stuff like that, I always think, I don't really get why people would do that, but I think you might legitimately have questions for them.
Yes. Oh yeah. And you get to, and they were, and a lot of them, people are very shy and stuff. I know this is hard to believe, but a lot of people who go to Doctor Who conventions are not necessarily socially confident people. Yeah.
What?
So if you're a talker like me and deeply uncomfortable with silences, then you will just start blurting out anything to avoid that. So I got to talk to Derek Jacobi. I got to ask him. I asked him if it was difficult to be gay, because he's openly gay, man. If it was difficult to be gay, just generally, is it difficult to be gay?
Because I'm considering it, but I don't like difficulty. So
it's like it's difficult to be gay in the 80s, 70s, and 80s as an actor. And he actually said, no, it was quite lovely. Everyone was quite lovely. I guess the British theater was very different, a different world than the rest of it. So it was kind of nice. We chatted with him. Eric Roberts, the master from the Paul McGann movie,
wow.
that he was there. He was very interesting because we were asking him about because he was nominated for an Academy Award for something called Midnight Train, I think it was, a movie with John Voight. And so we were like, oh, what was it like to work with John Voight? And he's like, oh, he's a great, really interesting guy. Unfortunately, he became a fascist. John Voight is a right-wing Republican guy, so he was laying into him about being a fascist. We talked to Matthew Waterhouse, Adric, who was surprisingly I don't know why I say this, but he was surprisingly erudite. He was very, very smart, and he kept talking about Adric as a queer character because Matthew Waterhouse is gay. It's sort of like Adric has sort of had a queer aspect to him, and then also as neurodivergent, and it was like he was clearly like something. He's probably a little bit on the spectrum, and I was like, yeah, I could see that.
Is the actor on the spectrum?
I don't think so. You could maybe.
Anyway, he didn't mention that.
Yeah, not officially. But so I said, oh yeah, you could maybe see in some, because he was definitely socially awkward. And yeah, you could definitely see aspects of it. What he's doing. I talked to Fraser Hines, Jamie, and Porter will be receiving this. It is a signed autograph of Jamie to Porter, specifically to Porter from Jamie.
I missed that when you sent it before. He sent me that, and I thought, oh, that's great. And I missed in the handwrite. Apologies. Well, that's exciting. Thank you, John.
Yeah. And so I said, I was saying my friend. Well, basically, I said my friend on a podcast. I do a podcast with a friend, and he really likes Jamie, which I think Fraser, who's getting up there, he's not young. I think heard as me trying to get him on the podcast. He's like, oh, people keep asking me to do podcasts, but I don't think I get the technology. It takes forever to get the technology to work. And then also, no one wants to pay me. And I was like, well, I wasn't offering to pay you or anything. And so, yes, but anyway, I had a lovely conversation with him about working with Pat Troughton and stuff like that. And
I like that you kind of got ahead of it and just turned him down. Like,
yeah, I was like, no, we really aren't interested. No. We had there was a bunch of people from Big Finish. There were panels there. It was all quite lovely, very friendly group of people from Doctor Who, but also all the attendees. It was a very.
How old is Fraser Hines, by the way?
Oh, he's not young.
Yeah, must be in his 90s, right?
No, I mean not quite that old, but probably in his 70s, I would guess. I mean, he was because he was very young when he did Doctor Who, and that was 60 years ago. So yeah, he's probably 70 or 80. Yeah, he's probably up there.
79. Yeah,
79. There you go. But yes, very, very sweet. There were a bunch of Big Finish actors there who were very interesting. So Jackie Tyler was there, Camille Cordry, Billy Piper was there, Rose, Jacqueline, who played Donna's mother, she was there, and she was very interesting and talking about doing coming back for the Star Beast and stuff like that. And yes, it was a lovely time. We very much enjoyed.
Were there any doctors there?
No doctors. They were a little apologetic about that because usually they're doctors, but actually it was kind of nice because it meant that they didn't take all, the doctors usually suck all the air out of the room because everyone wants to meet the doctor. But these were
Rose being there seems like a big deal.
Yeah, Rose. And I think, again, it was really Derek Jacobi's thing because it was just like, wow, this is actually, and I was a little worried that it was going to be like, oh, they're just going to, actually we made him cry because we took all this stuff. No. They showed clips from various things that he had done, and at one point they showed a clip of him as the master, which is in Utopia. It was a very good performance, and he got this very long round of applause, and people were very excited. And he apparently started tearing up, and the presenter was like, "Oh, you made Derek Jacobi cry!" Like I think he was very overwhelmed by how much people liked what he had done.
Couple quick things about him. I think I remember this episode, but he won an Emmy for appearing on Frasier.
Yes, he talked about that. Yes, he had a wonderful time doing that. He said,
and he has a Danish knighthood.
Oh, there you go. He's Sir Derek. He doesn't like using the Sir, but it was occasionally. Yeah, but he's got a Tony. He has an Emmy. I don't think he has a Grammy. Don't know if he's nominated, but he has a BAFTA. He's very well. Yes, he turns out he's a good actor. You should check him out, please. If you haven't, I get to talk to him.
Oh, I will.
I got his autograph, and I was talking to him about. So one of my favorite things that I think the first Shakespeare I ever saw was you in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, and he is the chorus. He plays the narrative at the beginning. He does this, and I was like, I think the best stunt is you. The opening monologue, which is one of my favorite in Shakespeare, is "Oh, for a muse of fire," and a kingdom for a stage, and sort of sets the scene. And so the movie starts up with him lighting a match. It's total darkness, and the match flares up, and then it's him. He says, "Oh, for a muse of fire," and then he delivers a couple lines of this monologue while holding this match and walking downstairs until he turns the lights on in the behind the stage thing or whatever. And I'm like, I think it's very impressive that you were actually able to keep the match lit, not fall down the stairs, and deliver Shakespearean dialogue. And he was like, yes, it was a greght stunt. Yes. So Gallifrey. Now, very important to note, I did not mention the podcast, except to Fraser Hines. I did not tell anyone else about the podcast. I made sure to keep
to him,
I kept the lid on that.
And to him, you mentioned it in a way of saying, like, we do not want you on this podcast.
Yeah. There was maybe next year. I don't remember if we go back next year. There was a little where you waited in line to get your picture taken with people. There was a little ledge that had people put little flyers and things on. So if we made a little note on the Mind Probe flyers, maybe we could put those out in places. But yes, it was a very lovely time, lovely people, and in particular, some very nice. I thought it was a very diverse crowd, a lot of LGBTQ folks, and a very diverse and welcoming, friendly crowd. So hi to everyone who was at Gallifrey 1. If you've heard this, then you somehow overcame all of the obstacles we've put in place to find this podcast.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention it more often. Not that you had the flyers, but just like, I do a podcast.
I don't.
All right. Well, good. That's very in character. Well, John, what are we going to talk about on this episode of the podcast
this episode,
that people are not going to hear?
Yeah, no one's going to listen. So if you went to Gallifrey 1, you wouldn't have heard this. We're talking about, it's the season finale, folks. It's the season, which we sort of do this podcast in seasons. So I guess this is our season finale, probably, or we do maybe Christmas, whatever.
Yeah,
it's the end.
That's why we waited the month. It's like a cliffhanger.
Exactly. Yeah, people were excited. It is the last of the whatever season we're in of Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman. I feel like the eighth season. It is Dark Water and Death in Heaven, and we finally find out the identity of the mysterious Missy, which comes as a huge surprise, I'm sure. And I've paired that with this story features the Cybermen and a moment where they are marching down the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral, which intentionally mimics a moment from our classic episode, a Second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe story, and featuring the Brigadier and Unit. A lot of familiar faces in it. And Cybermen also marching down the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral. The invasion.
All right, so we're gonna start with our NuWho. As mentioned, this is Series 8, episodes 11 and 12, but definitely presented as a two-parter, each 45-minute episode. So this is like a movie,
a
full-length movie.
Yeah.
And this is Dark Water and
Death in Heaven.
Excuse me, I have it. Yeah, Dark Water and Death in Heaven. Sorry, I was just scrolling to get them both on my screen at the same time. This is this is story number 252, and it aired in November of 2014, the 1st and the 8th. We mentioned, spoilers, Missy, who is our new incarnation of the Master. We also have Danny Pink, but maybe the last of Danny Pink. We'll get into that more. Well, he plays a very pivotal part in the
that's
episode.
true. Yeah, no, that's true.
And then, of course, we have Clara and the Doctor.
Ain't going anywhere.
So let us hear a little clip from this.
Little clip.
And there we go. Dark Water.
Clara? You asked me what we're going to do. I told you. We're going to hell. Or wherever it is people go when they die, if there is anywhere. Whatever it is, we're going to go there and we're going to find Danny. And if it is in any way possible, we're going to bring him home. Almost every culture in the universe has some concept of an afterlife. I always meant to have a look around. See if I could...
You're going to help me?
Well, why wouldn't I help you?
Because what I just did,
You betrayed me. Betrayed my trust. You betrayed our friendship. You betrayed everything that I've ever stood for. You let me down!
Then why are you helping me?
Why? Do you think I care for you so little that betraying me would make a difference?
A lovely line there. That's a very nice line there.
And that kept off. I was thinking in recapping this, which, a lot, 90 minutes, a lot went on here. But that clip is probably like, I don't know, 5 minutes into the first of the 2 episodes. And already prior to that time, Danny's dead. Clara has destroyed the keys to the TARDIS and gave the Doctor a huge ultimatum, declaring that he must basically break. I think what she's essentially asking for is like break your Time Lord rules and go back in time. And I mean, and so a lot goes on. I would say, and it's funny because I actually think this is similar to the invasion, which we'll talk more about later. Is that I feel like this whole episode starts stronger and more interesting, and then kind of like it ends well too. But there's a lot of like really interesting stuff at the beginning, and then I don't know if it totally comes together. It's hard to maybe land the plane.
I think I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there's actually literally a plane in it that does not land. Yeah, so I mean, it's all there.
So anyway, we find out that, and even prior to this, I guess the important part of how Danny dies, or the moment that Danny dies, is we have kind of this Stephen Moffat 3-season long thing, or I guess 1.5 season of Clara hasn't, like, maybe it's just this past season 8, but Clara hasn't been telling Danny that she's still
right.
He knows that she's still going with the Doctor. He's found that out.
But he just found in the last episode that she was lying. She found his.
Right.
He found her marking books or whatever
right.
on her students.
She has been lying for a season.
Yeah.
And saying that she's hasn't been going out with the Doctor. Anyway, she is going to call him, and not exactly sure what she's going to say, but she is going to tell him, I love you. There's going to be a big moment about, like, basically, I think what's probably going to happen is that, like, if she's going to have to choose one or the other, she is going to choose Danny, but she is going to come forward with all the truth.
Totally come clean. Yep.
This big moment, and Stephen Moffat has Danny hit by a bus or car. I don't know. We don't know what it is.
It's you. It's the Porter bus accident, bus accident.
Yes, we talked about this a lot.
Yeah, we talked about it in the past.
My lovelorn days in my 20s, which it just seemed like every time it would be close to getting in a serious relationship with something like traumatic would happen, pulling them away from me. So it was like, well, I can't argue with this. But so John always theorized that I was going to finally tell someone I love them, and then a bus would immediately hit them.
Yep.
Or me. At least it usually wasn't me. It was usually them. So that was good.
Usually them in the bus accident. Yeah.
You're
Clara in this situation.
Fight another day.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this happens.
Well, you were always very copacetic about it. In our scenario, you were always like, "Oh,
oh man." So Clara, distraught, comes to the Doctor and does this sort of ruse to get him to a particular. It was, I think, a
volcano
lava.
planet.
I don't remember if it was into a volcano. It was into lava. Which
TARDIS keys could only be destroyed by basically.
Yes, right. Basically, TARDIS keys are similar to like the One Ring to rule them all.
Yeah. Only
throw
we
them
did
into
this
the
much
hard
more quickly. Just like how the people were always like, why didn't they just take the Eagles to mount whatever? And it's like, yeah, that's just what we did here. We'll just take the TARDIS. Yeah.
And she smartly too. She got, which Frodo never did. She got all the copies of the key because what Frodo didn't do, he's like, yes, he brought the One Ring, but then remember all the copies that he had made for guests, they were still at home. Got to do that. Anyway, Clara got all the rings of the TARDIS, got him outside, went through this whole thing, and basically like held him hostage to say, like, you need to do this or I'm going to throw these keys. And the Doctor kind of plays it off like, I don't think you're going to do this. Then she does, one by one. And then eventually, and in a very poor move, she throws the last one in, which does remove all leverage that she has.
Right. Yeah. She's pretty much off the I mean, it's showing how traumatized she is, that she's just so insane with grief.
But in order for her to do this, what she did is she had placed those patches on. She thought she'd placed those patches on the Doctor's head to remove his memory briefly. We saw in a previous episode. And what had actually happened is that they had not had an effect on the Doctor, and he had used one on her. And then we just heard that speech. But basically, the Doctor says, the Doctor says, I will help you here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the afterlife. So then we see some of the afterlife. Fascinating. This conception of the afterlife, which is everyone's there, and you do they get into whether it's necessarily heaven or hell? It's both, right? But
No,
like
I
you're
mean it's very good place, right? It's like you're in an office and they're sort
Yes.
of like, we got to process you and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a very good place vibe before the good place. I'm pretty sure before the good place.
And then
came
one
out,
clear
so.
question they ask him on intake
Yeah.
is, "Have you killed anyone?" I think they just say that, but
No, it was are you are you gonna be cremated? Because that was the horrifying. They
yes,
make the link of like you can still
Ab-
feel everything that happens to your body, which is why you're
yes,
cold because you're in a freezer and yeah.
right. But I thought, well, so, yes, that's true. They talk about that, and then they say,
Oh
and
yeah, I
that
guess they do try to figure out because you might
they
run
bring it
into
up
them.
right,
Yeah.
because later in it you find out that Danny basically he killed I guess he probably killed more than one person in Afghanistan, but the notable thing that he remembers is there was a civilian, a young boy that he killed in kind of a misunderstanding, and part of the afterlife is like, yeah, well, you have to face him
Yeah.
and deal with him for a while or maybe eternity.
I think the boy had requested, like, it's like, hey, I guess you can like maybe sign up, like put a little thing like, hey, when that guy gets here, I'd like a
I'd love to
word.
just a
Yeah,
word,
just if
yeah.
I could just have just that, just a,
So he's there. Clara and the doctor arrive at the nether sphere, I guess they
Another
called
thing,
it.
yeah. Mhm,
And they talk to Missy. We finally see Missy. We've been seeing Missy for a season and a half,
Splotches of Missy. Yes.
but not much more. This was like the most we've saw her. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
anyway,
she's always been a little
so she
cameo.
shows up. She mentions the thing about cremation that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And we find out that like you can contact him. They have a call, but ultimately what we found out by the end of the episode is Missy is the master.
Mhm.
And that end, I then now don't really understand how much of the nether sphere and anything that she's operating is real or
Right, it's not.
just part of her game. So that's all not real.
Yeah, so the Nether Sphere is a Time Lord storage hard drive or something like that, and so somehow things are getting uploaded to it. It's not 100% clear to me how, like why, because it's like anybody who dies this season seems to be going to the Nether Sphere, and they're across time, they're across space.
Sure, but if
So
it's
I'm like,
just
how
kind of people
many?
we've seen this season, that's why
Right.
Missy has been following them around. So then it's just sort of limited to her little gambit here.
Maybe, I guess. I mean, it looked like it was very full of people,
Yeah.
and obviously people in Danny's past and things like that. So yeah, it's not quite clear what the rules of the Nether Sphere, but somehow it's capturing. And so the idea, obviously, is it's capturing souls, for lack of a better word, who are going to populate Cybermen, I think, or something at some point.
Right. So
Yeah.
Missy has been doing this to recreate the Cybermen. Again, as with many things with the Master, like, why? I'm not sure. It's kind of like a Joker situation. It was like just to cause chaos and do this.
Yeah. It's a weird. The motivation at the end is interesting.
So that's what we find out at the end of the first episode is both the reveal of the Master and I guess first we found out about the Cybermen and then the reveal that she's the Master.
Tortured. I think it's a great reveal.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you get the doctor being like, oh, there's something very familiar about this. And he walks out and then the doors close and the symbol of the place, which is like a little dot with a little dot, it's Cyberman eyes, which has been right in front of you the whole time, but you don't see it till they're together.
Yeah.
And then, so it's a great little sort of reveal of okay, and then the whole thing about the dark water, right? Which is because you have the bodies in the tanks, and then the water is, you can see organic matter through it, but not metal.
Yes.
Right. And he puts his hand in the thing, you can see he can't see his watcher's ring or something like that. And then the water slowly starts to drain, and then you see the side. So it's
because there's been skeletons there the whole time.
Yeah, skeletons there in the thing.
And then when it drains, they're Cybermen. Why? Because they're all metal. So like,
right. And so it's a wonderful reveal, but it's also like a very tortured way to get to it. It's like I got to work all this out to get to this thing.
So
and
similarly,
it's great, but
we'll talk about the invasion, and I like the Cybermen.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess at this point now I've seen more and more of the Cybermen stories. It's better to say like there are a couple of the Cybermen story that I really enjoy, and I do enjoy them generally more than the Daleks. But in both these stories, my feeling was the stories were very interesting, and the reveal that it was the Cybermen was very interesting. And then everything ceased to be that interesting once it was the Cybermen.
Doesn't have anything to do with
sort of like the same old thing.
Well, they become robots, right? They're just sort of
Yeah.
evil robots
Yeah.
when they do their thing. Yeah, they're
And
not
usually
interesting
when
as
they're
a character.
destroyed, it's a little like, yeah, well, I figured you would.
That was gonna happen.
I would say this one, the newer one, makes it more interesting. Though there's a bit of a Deus Ex Danny with it, but him being so part of this is that means Danny's gonna be a Cyberman, and in fact
Yeah.
is. So then when we get into the next episode, we see that Danny is one of these Cybermen, and so there's lots of scenes here with Clara and Jenna Coleman really going for it here, really emoting, losing. And some of this too is like, we're losing Danny here, which is trying and tough. At the same time, I feel like they barely got Danny into the here. Like, I know it's been a while since he's been present in the series, but honestly, he hasn't been a big part of that many episodes.
Right.
And then so there's this,
yeah.
and I think he does great in this episode, and they do a lot with the emotions of, but as I've said before, when they kill someone off, I'm like, did I really like that person that much? No, but it's like, did you earn it? It's like when you're going to have this big episode where you're like, oh my God, we're losing this person. It's like,
not Danny. Yeah.
You want to feel like, oh my God, I'm losing this member of my family, this person, my friend. And it's like, you haven't gotten me there yet. Like, you've only had him in a handful of episodes. There always felt like there was the promise that Danny was going to be a bigger part of the show. And then immediately an episode after, maybe that seemed that way, Clara would be off without Danny. And in fact, even this whole season of her not admitting that, to Danny that she was still with the doctor resulted in that, because it was like she would go off by herself with the doctor and purposely Danny would not be part of it. Anyway.
Well,
So
they try
Danny's
at the end. They try to bring his thing about the doctor, like the doctor's a general or whatever, and he uses people whatever that, and they try to bring that in.
He's an officer.
And some of the earlier ones, I kind of was okay. Like, I see kind of what you're saying, but then this one, I was like, no, dude, you're just attacking him for no reason. Like, he's just doing his best at this point. Like, I did not buy Danny's antagonism to the doctor.
Right.
Here,
basically, it was getting to the point where, as is always is with the Cybermen, like the world's about to end, the Earth is about to end,
like you do,
and the doctor, they're having conversations about what to do, and part of the doctor's saying is like, he's kind of talking about
casual. Sounds like they're standing around with tea. It's like, what should we do?
But he's making some decisions that could be seen as heartless, or just sort of like dealing with a lot of collateral damage to some of what's going on,
right?
And sort of resigning himself to it. And that's when Danny's like, well, see, that's just how he is. And it's like, okay, but I mean, he's just dealing with this, as you said, the situation as it is. Like, this is what's happening. He didn't do this.
Yeah, he didn't set this up, and it's not like he has other options that he's trying to explore. He's like, I'm.
By the way, we kind of glossed over this quick, but Missy is the master, as a regeneration of the master.
Were you surprised? Were you shocked?
I think I was a little bit ahead of it, but I certainly hadn't prior to this episode thought of it. I think as I got into the episode, first of all, I was like, finally we see who this person is.
Yep.
And then as we got into it, I was like, I was a little bit ahead of it.
Okay. Yeah.
But this then sets up, the doctor regenerating as a woman.
Yes, this is Stephen Moffat sort of throwing down the gauntlet of being like, you can regenerate into a woman.
Yeah.
Michelle Gomez, are you familiar with her? Have you seen her in other things?
She looked familiar, but I can't think of anything.
She's a comedian. She's been in, I think she's called herself a comedian. She's been in a bunch of comedy stuff. The Green Ward, there's some children's hospital. I don't know. There's some comedy things. She's in that. She's doing this. We're going to see a lot more of her in the Peter Capaldi years.
Oh,
she's
cool.
Great. I think she's
one of the best masters.
Yeah, she's excellent. I mean, I think she steals this episode too, and she's like this perfect sort of. She's playing basically an insane character, which is a very easy thing to go over the top with because there's no logic, right? There's no logic or whatever. But she's very good at just sort of. She just dances the line between funny and scary and evil, and I think she's excellent in this, and this is setting her up for being sort of the main antagonist for Peter Capaldi's Doctor, which is wonderful because she's also Scottish, so it's wonderful. I also love the joke. He comes running out of St. Paul's Cathedral. And he's ranting at people. He's like, "Run! There's terrible things," and she's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. It's a Scotsman. I didn't know there was a match on." And it's very good. But she's wonderfully sort of crazy. I think she's excellent in this and really steals.
Well, let me go through some quick things
because we skipped Kate. You've missed Kate and August.
Yeah, so that's what I was just going to say. We missed the whole unit situation. situation. So
Mhm.
unit comes, really strong unit coming down and really taking control of stuff.
What a
Yes.
great! I love the moment where they come. This is the second episode begins, and I've seen this before, obviously, but I've sort of forgotten about this. Is when Kate walks up and gets to do the badass line of like, "Oh yes, we've met you before. You left this last time," and throws like a Cyberman head on the
Yeah,
floor.
that's great. Yeah, so they show up. They are able to kind of like corner Missy. They help with that, and then the very important thing is they induct the Doctor as the president of Earth.
President, yeah.
And and that's where it gets to when we talked about later that Danny kind of castigates him for like, oh, see, he's a person in charge. He deals with this person in charge thing.
Did you catch there's a great line in there about where she says, "Oh yes, the president's in charge," and the Doctor assumes it's the president of America. He's like,
Right.
"Oh, the last thing we want is Americans bombing around the place. They'll only start praying." It's like, ooh, all right, not fair, but
You know what I think with the officer thing is, and if I don't remember this, maybe this did happen. I also maybe needed a bit more like what happened with Danny in Afghanistan that the officers
yeah,
like that was his opinion about the higher ups. Like,
yeah, I
and you
agree.
can imagine any number of stories that could get you there, but like that was never mentioned. It was just sort of taken as read that, oh yes, he hated all the officers. Like that's not necessary. I mean, there's enmity between the officers and the enlisted, but like I don't know, like he seemed to have such like be so dead set in this. But
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you could almost read it as like, oh, he just watched the final season of Blackadder and was like, yeah, all the officers are bad. And you're like, all right, well, sure, but I don't know that would make me that enraged.
I'd love
But like,
to see now you I have a perfect thing. It was like we need to see, and I think they would actually do this with Hugh Laurie and Rowan Atkinson. I need to see the updated Blackadder in like Afghanistan, like in the 2000s. Like how amazing would that be? I think they'd be up for it.
I think
that
so.
would be
Yeah,
amazing.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, so we see Kate Stewart. That was great.
And
But
Osgood.
ultimately, yeah, and Osgood. But ultimately, we come to and she's killed, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Osgood is killed.
Which is, Kate, when Kate gets sucked out of the plane, I remember watching it the first time and being like, oh, no, come on. She's great.
Yeah.
I don't want Kate
Yeah.
to die. And unfortunately.
So, we end up on kind of this land, and where we had this discussion that we're talking about that Danny's yelling at the Doctor. That basically Claire's there with Danny. Danny's
in the
saying,
graveyard. Yeah.
I am temporarily not a Cyberman, but once you switch, so this is the last of me.
Yeah.
But you need to switch me off so that
you
we
find
can
out their plans.
Yeah, find out their plan. But once you do, that's it. And also, I will be a Cyberman then. So they're talking about this, and ultimately, the decision is made that they're going to do this and allow Danny to like incept them with the idea, but trust that he is actually going to stay separate from them. So, then they do it, and I don't know. It's always like everything just shuts down so quickly with the Cybermen because of the network effect of Cybermen.
Right.
So it just all ends. It's
they all
fine.
fly up into the sky and blow up the things that were going to create more Cybermen.
And
what
in
did you
blowing
think
it up,
of? What did you think of Missy's motivation? Yeah. So remember, she gets the cyber army, and then she's got all these people. And then she's like, and then she hands it to the Doctor. She's like, it's your birthday present. Now you get an army. What do you think about that?
I thought it was interesting and at least sets up, I'm interested to that she'll be in it more because it did set up a dynamic between the Master and the Doctor that I don't feel like we've ever had, which is just this idea that like we used to be friends. I am now a deranged lunatic, but I'm actually still reaching out. Like I want to hang out. Like I want to be with you.
Yep.
I think that part of it was interesting, but it felt strange in the moment. I don't know how I feel about it because I did like that aspect of it, but it also felt like all this is for that. But then at the same time,
Right.
Time Lords dudes just sort of play God, and they're just like, yeah, I'm just fooling around with this thing. What do you want? You want an army? Here, you're president of Earth. What do you think about that?
There you go. Yeah, I think then. So there's going to play out to the next couple seasons, and it's an interesting dynamic, and basically Moffat starts to try to write it like their relationship they're so superior to us as beings, and their relationship is so complicated that you don't even begin to understand it, and that sort of playing like they're actually friends in spite of all this, they're still sort of friends, and that's going. And we'll see in the opening of the next season because she comes back. They're going to be like, "Oh, he's my best friend, or a closest friend." And so, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. This one I mean, I have to say, I don't know. I get ambivalent about it because it's like, all right, well, that's a weird motivation for her. At the same time, I'm like, well, I suppose that's better than she was just trying to take over the world. That's so boring. Like, I mean, yes, that's what the Master does. It's like, well, that's definitely different than what the Master usually does. Like, and the idea of like, here you go, Doctor. Here's an army to fix everything and do like tempting him to be like, you're the guy who always wants to make everything right, and here's the tool to do it. So maybe I don't know. I go back and forth on whether this makes sense to me as a motivation or not.
Last thing, or last couple things, rapid fire, a bunch of stuff going on here, which is the Brigadier was brought back as a Cyberman. And kills Missy at the last moment. And then the other thing that happens at the end is okay, so then the Nethersphere did exist because Danny basically has the ability to bring one person back from like basically re-download them
which
from the Nethersphere.
Is again like, so where does their body come from? Because they go through the thing.
I guess their body was still there. Like, I don't know.
It's a very Stephen Moffat thing, which is sort of like, don't worry about it. It's just, I feel this is cool. I got this idea in the work.
Well, anyway, Danny has the opportunity to use this to pass through one more time.
Yeah.
But he gives it to the kid that he killed. Meanwhile, this kid came back, his family, this kid's been gone for like 10 years.
They're going to be like, hey,
we
had
kind of moved
one.
on. We put a gym in your room.
The Afghanistan sewing room is lovely. Yeah.
And then we end at the very end, it kind of leading into the next episode with Santa showing up. And what's his name? Nick Wright showing up as
Nick
Santa.
Frost, yeah.
Nick Frost, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, yeah. Yeah, no. We can move on to the next one. Sure. I think I do love, the only thing I'll just call out that we didn't talk about is I do love the cliffhanger, the beginning of the second episode where Clara is like, I'm the doctor, like to try to confuse the Cyberman, is like, I'm actually the doctor. Doesn't this only make sense? There's a wonderful little thing. They go into the credits, and if you pay attention, the credits, it's her face instead of his face, and her name first instead of Peter Capaldi's name first. Like they play it like, all right. And so there's a brief moment where I was like, wow, that would be super cool if like somehow they were like, yeah, it turns out Clara was the doctor the whole time. They didn't do that, but I think maybe that would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm not sure we completed the good man arc, right? So the arc of this season is, am I a good man or not? And so the ending is like, I'm not a good man, I'm an idiot. And it was like, I don't know that we finished that. I don't know we finished the I don't like soldiers, which is never brought up again, by the way, after this. So there were a lot of threads hanging there.
And that's disappointing because I feel like the entire character of Danny Pink existed for this weird I don't like soldiers thing.
To make that point.
Like, what was that even all about? Like,
yeah.
So a lot of hanging that actor, because I feel like he got kind of short shrifts.
And I like him, right?
It was good. He's fine.
I really like him. Yeah, he was excellent in the role. And I'm not. Yeah, it didn't quite stick to landing.
Maybe what it is that as we've found, anyone from Clara's life is just going to got. Like they're going to get disappeared soon.
Yep.
And
because
maybe
none of them make sense.
He held out the longest.
He did, and until he was hit by a bus.
All right, well, let's move on to our classic episode.
Yes.
This is a long ones. This episode we're covering a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So we'll try to go a little quicker. But this is season 6 of the Classic Who, story number 3, the 46th Doctor Who story. It's an 8-parter.
Woo.
And I will say I hate 6-parters, so I was pretty worried about an 8-parter. But I feel like for an 8-parter, it goes by very quick.
And I mean, this one has everything you love. Cyberman, the Brigadier.
It literally has everything.
It checks all your boxes.
It's the 2nd of November, aired in 1968, 2nd of November, right up until Christmas, 21st of December. They're 25-minute episodes, and really in the 25 minutes episodes of this era, there's like 20 minutes of show.
Right,
because
you get the recaps and the credits.
Minute or two, exactly, is the recap, and then the credits. So It's not as scary as you think to get into this.
Just
but
dive in, folks. Dive in.
let's hear a clip from the invasion.
How nice to see you again, Doctor.
It's Colonel Lethbridge Stewart.
Brigadier now. I've gone up in the world.
Of course, the Yetis. We met you in
That's right, McCrimmon in the Underground. Must be 4 years ago now.
That felt long. It only seems like a couple of weeks ago. I've told you over and over again, Jamie. Time is relative.
You still making a nonsense of it, Doctor, in your... what was it called? TARDIS?
Yes, we're still travelling, yes.
Yes, Miss Travers told me all about it. It's, well, it's, to say the least, an unbelievable machine.
Any more unbelievable than the Yetis?
No, true. I'm not quite so much of a skeptic as I was since that little escapade.
But what's all this? And why all the cloak and dagger stuff to bring us here?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. My chaps have to be a bit melodramatic in their methods, but I'll explain. Look, do sit down.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. Sergeant Waters.
Yes, sir.
Lay out some tea, will you? You'd like some tea, wouldn't you, Doctor?
Oh, thank you, and a patty cake biscuit.
Yes, well, since the Yeti do, I've been in charge of an independent intelligence group that we call UNIT. That's United Nations Intelligence Task Force.
You mean you're like a world secret police?
Well, not quite. We don't actually arrest people. We just investigate.
Oh, great.
I like-
No, he's been in
Just
one
before the Web
Yeah.
of Fear, and we've done that one, the Yeti one,
Yes.
and then this was the follow up. I also like I can't tell if it's an acronym or not, but you get Jamie. He's like, oh, like a world secret police. I'm like, yeah, you would have known that as a Highlander in Scotland in the 1600s. You'd be like, oh yeah, I know a world secret police. I got it.
But then I looked into this when I was watching the episodes. So one before the Yeti, which is last season, the previous season, but then he doesn't show back up again until
Pertwee.
the third Doctor shows up.
This is actually
He heard from space.
This is by Derek Sherwin, who is sort of the architect of the third Doctor's first season, and it's sort of a backdoor pilot for the new Doctor Who. It was sort of like, what would happen if Doctor Who were set on Earth and he was a scientific advisor to this military thing? So it really is sort of a setup to the next two.
So we show up. It's Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe. The TARDIS lands. Like, oh my gosh, what a coincidence! It lands in the 1960s in London.
Did you, by the way, did you watch the animated version of this? Like, what did you?
Yes, so on
okay, so you
BritBox,
saw animated. Oh,
yeah,
it is on
well,
BritBox. Oh, good.
It is on BritBox, and they just do the nice thing of just I think the second and fourth episodes.
Yeah.
They just show the animated, and then they go.
Oh, nice.
For everything they have the filmed of, they just show that. So
okay, all right.
So yeah, they land there, and they want to. There's something damaged in the TARDIS, actually a circuit board that gets discussed a lot, and they're going to go to find Professor Travers, who I don't remember. Was he seen before? They talk
he
about
was in
him.
Web of Fear, and before that, he was in
Oh.
Abominable Snowman, which we haven't watched yet. But yes,
Okay.
he is. Remember Anne Travers in Web of Fear? He's her father.
Yeah,
the old
okay.
guy who
Right,
gets
right, right.
possessed. Yeah.
Well, so they go to see him, and he's not there in the flat, but there's another woman there instead who's, I thought, just doing a really fun character out of nowhere, like the random 60s girl who's into photography. I thought,
Isabel, I think Isabel Watkins.
Yes.
Yeah, she's great.
and she says, like, oh no, he's moved on. My father, who's also a professor, is here instead. They find out that he's gone missing, and he works for this weird electronics company called International Electromatics.
Yeah, i.e.
So Zoe stays there, and
And
I
just
thought
does
this is
photo posing. Yeah, she's like with a boa.
yeah, I thought this is generally a good story for Zoe, because she has this part of the beginning where she's just like, I just want to hang out here, and then later she shows how like she's this brilliant mathematician. So I think it's pretty fun for her. But for now, she's going to stay and have fun with the photographer. So they, Jamie and the Doctor, head to investigate the office, and they meet Tobias Vaughn, who we mentioned earlier, who's he's like what you think of as like a Bond villain, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's very much what would be in this era, maybe was copied.
Yeah, that's actually
be a Bond
really
villain.
apt. Yeah, he's this is played by Kevin Stoney, and he's a really good actor. And just plays this very smooth guy who's sort of on the brink of cracking but then also has this very I love, and the way he talks is just like
Yeah.
he's great. I love him.
So they go inside the his office. They have some back and forth with him, and there's clearly some like weird stuff going on here. They take him inside the there's like the security taking them inside. So things are how they get inside.
They have to convince there's a computer like at the door that they have to talk into, right? They have to talk their way. And Zoe breaks it later.
Right.
That,
Zoe
yeah.
breaks that later.
Yeah.
So basically, there's a lot of talk that Vaughn is clearly working with someone to take over the world,
Like
and he's Bill Gates or something. He's or Apple or whatever. Like everyone is using their technology,
right?
And
which is transistor radios, which is
yeah,
it's just transistor radio.
He gives one to Jamie, and Jamie's immediately like, just again, knows how to work it, even though he's a Scottish Islander. And is like, this is great. And then about halfway through, again, this is 8 episodes, so we're skipping through a lot, but about halfway through, we find out that the person he's working with is the Cyberman. And I have to say, it's one of those things in both these cases, you're like, why did I not see that? But I really didn't. And then when they revealed it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But just the way these all first 4 episodes are set up, I thought it was really interesting. I was kind of brought along with it. I liked how they set up just like the 60s in London. Of course, Unit's great. We get to see the Brigadier clearly with a fake mustache, which later I'm sure he grew it.
He grew it later, but yes, it was fake initially, yes. Because he said he couldn't grow a good one. Yeah.
Right. A lot of the other Unit staff were there. It was just like, I just loved it. Like, it was like, this is great. I'm in. And here's what I guess I have to say is that like the plot had me like watching each episode, like generally like, I wonder how this is going to play out. Like clearly they're hinting at something, but I don't know what this is. I want to find out who this is. What are they trying to do? And then again, it's revealed that it's Cybermen. I was like, oh, okay, the Cybermen, I got it. And then from there on out, it was just like, yeah, and then they're Cybermen, we got to take care of them. And it just felt kind of like a real letdown.
The first four are great. The first 4 are great setup, and then the last 4 is just kind of like, oh. And then there's basically a lot of stock footage battles at the end.
I kind of thought the last basically episode brought back some interesting stuff of like, I liked Zoe. So Zoe, they end up deciding to fire missiles. The Cybermen are
Cyber Space Fleet, they're
they're flying in, and so they want to do.
They don't have enough missiles to shoot them all, but Zoe figures out how to get them all with one.
They're in a formation, and she's like, "Let me just do the math to figure this out for you," and she does it. And they're just like, "That's kind of a fun moment." And then
I love that there's the guy who's like, "Can we keep her? She's much prettier than a computer."
Yeah, I think that's fun. But then to give you an idea of how they clearly just kind of got tired of it. The actual end of the entire Cyberman, the whole thing, happens completely off screen, and it's just another guy in the missile control watching his like screen and going like, and we did it, we killed all the Cybermen. Like, that's it.
Over.
He didn't show anything or say anything. So I thought it was funny.
There's a surprising amount of things that happen. There's several battles that happen off screen. Like they'll be like, we got to get this guy, and then it just cuts to guys like, they jumped us. There were like 5 cars and tanks, and it was very impressive with helicopters and stuff. But then they got the guy, and like you don't see any of the things happen. Because they're just like, oh yeah, that totally.
And they're
happened.
talking about like Megatron bombs and tactical nukes and all this stuff. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and it actually is like I agree, it is kind of a pilot for that season, and I like it. I mean, it's enjoyable, but it really has me thinking of like maybe the Cybermen kind of like take interest out of some of the stories that they're in. And now I think there have been some that have been really interesting. I thought Tomb of the Cybermen was really good and had some interesting parts, but at least here, I don't know, it felt like that the Cybermen kicked in, and then the writing kind of like, okay, everybody, like take a break, like Cybermen are here, like we'll just run the standard stuff.
Well, it's sort of I think it's just a perennial problem with the Cybermen, which is, are they robots or not? Especially once you have to create a human character sort of to be the more interesting thing. It's like Davros and the Daleks, right? Davros is way more interesting than watching the Daleks talk. Same kind of thing. And so Vaughn becomes sort of like, all right, he's the more interesting aspect of this.
By the way, I like
they
that
become
Vaughn,
robot bosses.
After the invasion starts, there's a period where Vaughn is now like teaming up with the Doctor. They're a little team, because Vaughn has not really become good. He's just like, I hate them so much for betraying me.
Totally
that
screwed
I will now.
me. Yeah.
So I like that.
Predicted. Yeah. No, I think that's Kevin Stoney, who's great as Vaughn, and interestingly, we'll get to him shortly. He also played Mavic Chen in the first Doctor series where he is basically the human who gets screwed over by the Daleks. So he's really done all the top ones. Yeah, I think the big thing about this one is it's just so epic. It's like they've got helicopters, they've got boats, they've got planes. I mean, the brigade unit is basically in a giant C-140 that's flying around, and
no, we
jeeps
didn't see. There's a sequence where they're escaping from the building, and that's unfortunately in the animated one. So I don't know how much, but like they escape into a helicopter, like as you said. So what I mean is, it wasn't just there because there was some stock footage of missiles and stuff.
Yeah,
but the helicopters, like they were in a helicopter.
And I think that I read some article where they're talking about Fraser Hines had to climb this rope ladder on a helicopter and it killed. And he said that whoever, I forget who was playing Isabel Watkins, her skirt was flying everywhere, and he said he read some article about how the Queen had lead weights sewed in her dresses to prevent them from blowing up, and so he made his costume designer do the same thing so his kilt wouldn't blow up. This one's also a little bit famous for so Benton. This is the first appearance of Sergeant Benton, or I forget if he's corporal. I think it's or whatever he is. So we see Benton, and so sort of the beginnings of the unit team, and then this one's also a little bit famous for the sexism. There's some little interesting moments of like the brigadier being very sexist to Isabel, and she's like, "Oh, I could take photos and I could do this." And he's like, "That's all that gibberish. Do you actually know what you're talking about?" And she's like, "Excuse me." So, she's much prettier than the computer, sir, and that, and there's a few other lines where the soldiers are being a little bit sexist, but yeah, I think the interesting thing about it is it's just such an epic story, and it is 8 episodes, which is one of the longer. There have been a lot of 7s and 6s are common, 7s, 12, and but 8 is sort of. I think this may actually be the only 8 episode story, and I mean, there's fat. You could trim a little fat, but it's not. I mean, certainly there are 6 episode ones which are worse, more dragged, more
agreed,
delayed than this one.
Yeah, I didn't think this one so much suffered from the fat. It was just more that like it trailed off a bit. At the end,
it was just like I guess we could just blow some stuff up, and that's what they did.
Robot theme.
It started as Gregorian chant theme. I was like, "Oh, these monks are very into the theme."
Kind of snuck up on me. We are adherents of the repeating themes here at No Not the Mind Probe. We like to look at topics and ideas that are threaded throughout Doctor Who and throughout time and space itself. John, what themes did you want to touch on for these couple episodes?
Well, let's come back to Unit. We've talked about Unit in the past. I know a long time ago, but let's talk about it again now that we've got the benefit experience, because I think we definitely have two stories where Unit obviously plays a very key role. You've got obviously the invasion where the Doctor is teamed up with the Brigadier, and that gives him sort of the shade of legitimacy, and obviously doing the investigation. And then you've got that. So this is the very first Unit story, right? This is where Unit begins. And then you've got Dark Water, Death in Heaven, where the Doctor is declared president of Earth in a crisis.
And by Unit. Like, Unit is such a fan of the Doctor that they're like,
who else could it be?
Course,
right? Yeah. So, I mean, does Unit work as a device? I mean, is this so it's an interesting, like, the Doctor as sort of this establishment figure, right? He's not the outsider. He's actually in with the military of all people. Does Unit work, or does it undercut the Doctor?
I think it's great because it completely puts him off edge. So I like, because I know in like Spearhead from Space and stuff like that, for example, and they're several episodes at the beginning of that season where they're holding him at arm's length, like, who is this guy? But then it develops after a few stories into they do depend on him, and they recognize how clever he is, and they're like, yeah, let's listen to him, let's let him kind of lead the way. I think similar to how the cops in many of the Sherlock Holmes stories eventually are like, we don't like him or understand him, but yes, like, please let him lead the way, because the thing will get done better and quicker if we follow him. And I like it because I think it makes the Doctor uneasy. Like, he doesn't like work. I mean, he likes working with them, but he doesn't maybe feel comfortable within this establishment, and yet they're sort of leaning on him, so he takes the role. So I think it works. And then it also allows for maybe, especially like on these Earth stories, a structure that allows the Doctor to be involved in these world-changing events that it's sort of very unbelievable for him to be involved with otherwise. I would say it also is pretty, it's just UNIT happens on other planets too. They have their version of it that he just is suddenly plugged into the world government of that planet. Like that happens on the other planets because that's the only way it could. Like he saves those civilizations, and it's because he suddenly gets like moved up the chain pretty quickly and is talking to like all the world leaders. So I think it works. And I think then just like plot wise, while they are working together, they have such different strategies that it provides like constant kind of conflict in the plot without like stopping the plot. Like they argue about stuff and they're like, the brigadier's out there saying, chap at the wings, shoot him and stuff like that. But the Doctor knows that ultimately the brigadier's heart is in the right place. And yeah, I just think it works. But I mean, for me personally, it also works because like I love stuff like that. Like I love Tom Clancy things where like, yeah, there's a secret agency that works
handles this stuff,
outside of things and they handle everything. Like while that is like clearly terrifying to some people, to me it's like, oh yes, I love hearing about that. That sounds great.
Thank goodness someone's running the thing.
Yeah, exactly. At least someone's doing something.
I like that. I think that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that before. Of like, it's especially in the older series, UNIT is like the psychic paper of the new series. So the psychic paper, you just flash it and you're suddenly in charge, you're legitimate, you can be you're whatever. You didn't have that in the old series, but it's like, oh, well, I'm with UNIT. And even I think we watched Time Flight, where the Doctor is the one at with the Concorde, and he flashes UNIT credentials to get access to the head of the airport and stuff like that. And it's sort of like, well, yes, look, if we're doing this realistically, without some cloak of authority, you couldn't be in the room. Like no one's going to want to do. You're just a crazy person, right? So like, yeah, you need some framework of legitimacy in order to operate with the president or the whatever authority figures are around. So it is, yeah, sort of the psychic paper of the classic series, and certainly in the Third Doctor of like, oh, he can mix with civil servants, he can be at the top secret base or the experimental whatever, and that's his ticket in. So yeah, I like that. I like that as sort of it's the way into the more interesting story. Otherwise, you're just on the outside, sort of looking in. And then also, yeah, the tension of like, and certainly in the sort of later Pertwee Third Doctor era, they sort of go away from this, but early on, definitely that tension with the Brigadier of like, here's how the military is going to solve this thing, and they have loyalties to Earth, obviously, and the chain of command and all these other things, versus the Doctor, who's the gentleman of the universe, and like, so you have the Silurian story, right, where the Doctor's trying to make peace, and the Brigadier's like, we should just blow them up, and blows them up at the end, and so you have that like that tension there, and I think you have it in Darkwater, Death in Heaven, of like Peter Capaldi liking being president, but also being like, well, I don't really want this job, and yeah,
I actually think
it's good.
And I would hasten to guess this doesn't happen exactly like this. I don't know exactly what happens with the rest of Peter Capaldi, but I think the way Pertwee worked pretty well with like just being in all those UNIT episodes, like that was just the show. I think Peter Capaldi with this version of UNIT, because he's so grumpy, like and irascible, I think it would work. It would be really fun. Like if he was just
season 9 is
UNIT.
basically just the West Wing season 8. I mean, it's just basically like it's Peter Capaldi as president, and there's a whole
right. Well, yeah, he doesn't have to remain president. Just like him working with UNIT over and over again, and like and grousing about it, and like I think that would be great, but yeah.
When it is clearly an important device, because I mean we just had it in the Giggle, right, and it's going to be back in this new season of Shirigawa. Like UNIT, just it's clearly,
that's right, I forgot that.
It's clearly, so yeah, we've seen it. The invasion is where it starts, and that's 1968, right? 67, 68. I guess 68, maybe 69. And yeah, right up to present day. And, it's because they're like, yeah, this clearly is something useful. And so you've got it through all of the Third Doctor, some of the Fourth, mentioned a couple times in Fifth and Seventh, and then coming back even into the modern series. So it's clearly an essential. If you want, I guess, yeah, if you want a shortcut to the leadership of the world, which is if you're talking about world-changing events, like that's what you're gonna have to do. And I think they first showed up in in the Slitheen episode of Christopher Eccleston, like where they had the alien spaceship crashing, and then it was like how he got in was through sort of some connection to UNIT, and you had these people. It was like, yeah, I guess if you want to be dealing on this scale of being in the room when these things are happening, that's the only place you can be. You've got to be in some kind of world military police. Otherwise, you're going to be on the outside looking in.
All right.
Woo.
Well, this is a doozy of an episode because we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But we're going to move on to the ranking now.
Well, that's
John,
what people are here for. People want to know what we think.
That's right. Then they don't care about the details. They just want the numbers. They're numbers,
They want
guys.
the numbers.
You know?
Yep, they're accountants.
We are ranking the first 300 Doctor Who television stories. We have ranked 192 of them already.
That's insane.
So we will add these onto them. Let me get my rankings up. I'll pull them up on the old
on the old internet
dials here. Let me turn some knobs and dials. Okay, so Darkwater, Death in Heaven, like we said, we're at 192. I put this kind of right in the middle of the pack for me. So I did like it. Like I said, I couldn't get over that. Like I was just left a little. I thought there were lots of really good stuff in it, but I was just left a little like maybe it's just the whole idea of like this is it. We're already done with Danny. Like that. I felt like a little tough with it. I think they did a good job with it. But yeah, so it just felt like right in the middle of the pack with me. I put it right next to a classic one that I famously ranked very lowly early on, which is put it right below the Ark in Space. So I think that's good company for it. It's right there. It's also right below the first episode of the new series, Rose. So Rose, Ark in Space, and then Darkwater, Death in Heaven. It's just above Death Breath, the Ice Warriors. So yeah, it's good, but I don't know. It just left me kind of a little cold. The Invasion, I put higher. This could have really, if had it ended stronger, really been in like my top 10 episodes.
I was just it ticks all your boxes. Yeah,
totally. Jamie, Unit, Cybermen, 60s. I loved like the whole like being in England in the 60s. So I did put it high, but I couldn't because it just fell off there. I didn't quite make it into like my top 20 or anything. But I have it 45. So I have it much higher than in this particular episode than the NuWho. I have it just below I put it right around the Hand of Fear and the Macro Terror, which were other older episodes that I really enjoyed. And I have it just above Flatline, Periods of Mars, Invasion of the Dinosaurs. So I have it.
I feel like the Macro Terror is one of your benchmarks. Like if it's like a very 60s sci-fi episode, like for that one, like I don't get you on a lot of things, but I get you on that. I get that.
And I misspoke. It was 44, not 45, but right in that area, and it was 112, not 113. But anyway, so those are my rankings. John, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, we're a bit flip flopped, I think. Yeah. So I've got Darkwater, Death in Heaven at number 57. I've got it right around Earthshock, below Earthshock, above The Time of the Doctor and Cold War. I think it's a strong episode. I love Missy. I love the introduction of Missy, and I think Michelle Gomez is fantastic. I really like the Peter Capaldi, Clara, Jenna Coleman interaction. I think seeing something really good there. That whole opening sequence is intense and well acted. They're fantastic. But like you, I agree. It fizzles at the end. I was like, oh, all right. She gave him the army, and he's like, I don't want the army, and they're like, I don't want it anymore. And then the Brigadier shows up, and like that part to me is like, so wait, is he just flying around now in a Cyberman outfit? Like I don't understand what's happening with the Brigadier. That was a little weird. So yeah, solid, but and again, I think wraps up the arc in an interesting way. And so yeah, not bad. The Invasion I've got down at number 98.
Yes.
Right, above Planet of the Giants, below Pirates of Pompeii. I like The Invasion. I think it's I love season 7. I think it's a fantastic season of Doctor Who, and so this obviously being the setup for it. I like Unit and the Brigadier. It drags a little bit to me, and as you say, I think those last 2 episodes really drag. To the point where when episode 7 ended and Vaughn was like, oh, I'm going to turn against the Cybermen. I was like, oh, it's over now. And then it like ends. I was like, oh, and there's a whole nother episode to go. They're going to have to drag this out. But I think all the cast are strong. I think the story is great. I think it's very entertaining. So yeah, I'm 97. 98,
98. When we put in the old supercomputer here and combine these rankings, we have The Invasion tied at 62 with the Time Warrior, just below the Three Doctors, just above Smith and Jones. And then we have Darkwater Death in Heaven at 88, just above Spearhead in Space, and the Hand of Fear, just below the Hand of Fear. So in good company, and they end up in our top half. But yeah, because we both disagreed, they both ended up higher than we thought. So
Doctor Who magazine says we've got so let's see, Darkwater Death in Heaven in the Peter Capaldi era is ranked number 14. Number 13. So below Listen, which we have seen, and a few up above Deep Breath. Not many that we've seen already. There's a few up there. So upper third, I'd say, of the Capaldi era. The Invasion, top 4, number 4 for Patrick Troughton.
There you go.
So just below the Power of the Daleks, and just above the Web of Fear. So definitely one of the popular ones over the years, been around 4, 5, 6. So pretty consistent at that level. I think if I remember, the first episode to be released on video incomplete. So so obviously the animated missing episodes, before they were animating episodes, they would be like, well, we got 6. Here you go. And they had Nick Courtney narrate. He's like, here's what happened in episode 1. And then they just went to, and so it was like sort of it was not included in the packages of televised at like the PBS or others, because we won't show an incomplete one. So they couldn't do that. And so, so no one had really seen it. So it came out on video. It's one of the early ones on video that was sort of incomplete with the linking. And then it was also the first to be animated. So when they finally started animating missing episodes, this was the first one to come out. So I think it's been out there in circulation for a while, and certainly has sort of a strong reputation because of that first unit story in Nick Courtney and stuff.
Well, you have ranked, just checking in on this because I like to do regularly, you still have the 12th Doctor with a bullet as the top Doctor. Yeah. And I'm just out of curiosity, and then I think where I'm hearing is that there's better Peter Capaldi episodes to come.
The next one is going to be up there.
And so I'm wondering, like, do you, I know you like all the Doctors, but like, do you feel that way, that Peter Capaldi is one of your favorite Doctors? Or one of your favorite
actually, I do. I think he's up there. I think he's definitely in the top few. He's obviously one of the best actors, I think, to play the role. I like it's. Well, he's got some of the greatest ones coming up. They're very strong, but there's not really many that I'm like, I wouldn't want to have to sit through that again. And I think he's just, because of the way he plays it, because he's so sort of prickly, and it's just not your lovable Matt Smith, kind of guy. I think that makes him so much more interesting, right? And I think he's just really, it's just really dynamic. He's funny. I like that. I also, you know what? I also like House. I think it's just like angry people who get to say whatever they want to people and get away with it. Maybe that's really going for. I would love to be able to insult people and say mean things to them and not have, and people still like me. Maybe that's what I got. Yeah.
Well, John, we're gonna tell people, go to mindprobe.show. They can see the rankings. They can see
you jerk. See, I'm not good at it. I gotta be better. It's gotta be a little more biting, but yeah.
You can see the rankings. You can see what we're gonna watch next. What we're gonna watch next. If you want to watch along, you can see how to subscribe. We would love it if you did. John, what are we watching next episode?
Well, next episode, it's the holidays. It's Christmas. Celebrate Christmas.
Christmas in March.
It's Christmas in March. We've got the Christmas special from for end of season 8. We have Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman and Nick Frost, obviously teased in the post credit. I'm glad. I wasn't sure. I was going to ask if you stuck through the credits to see sort of the interruption of Santa Claus. We'll talk about next episode. Caused great consternation amongst Doctor Who fans. But we got Santa Claus appearing in the Christmas special Last Christmas. And spoiler alert, there's a lot of dreams in that. So we have paired that with the 5th Doctor, Nyssa, briefly, Tegan, Adric, and the mind blank that is Kinda, which is one of the stranger Doctor Who stories ever, really. But yes, also a lot about dreaming there. So into the world of dreams.
Well, I am excited to enter that dream world with you and with all of us. I tend to not remember dreams. I remember I had a very common dream that dogs were chasing me down a sewer when I was little. I had it like all the time.
I still have the dream where I'm supposed to be in. I'm supposed to have been in a class all semester, but I never went. Now I don't know when any of the tests or exams are, and then I'm going to fail the class. It's usually Latin class for some reason, which a lot of people
have that
have.
dream.
Oh, constantly. Yeah.
John, if
No.
you're not in Latin class anymore, there's just nothing to it.
A quiz could happen anytime.
Mindprobe.show.